Hello, and welcome to the Leadogo Impact Circle, Lift as We Climb, a movement dedicated to having real talk about the issues and challenges women face and bringing practical and actionable change to making a lasting impact. Because here at Leadogo, that's what we do. We're a social learning network built on the goodness of the human spirit. We curate individual knowledge and expertise to drive genuine human connection and shared learning to literally change the world from the inside out. I'm one of your hosts, Lauren Ammon, Chief Learning Officer and recently appointed Energy Czar. And I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Paula Coley, and our panel of 6 truly magical women. So Paula, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks so much, Lauren. I'm Paula Coley, co-founder and CMO at Leadogo. And I would really like to extend a very heartwarming thank you to each one of our panelists and audience. And I really cannot go ahead without highlighting how phenomenal our previous session was. And we had a lot of people join in from 7 different countries, and we received an outpour of love to the point that we actually had men confess that they got teary-eyed. So thanks so much for sharing your journeys with us. I think we can have like a quick virtual round of introduction. And we would like to have a little fun here today. And it'd be great if each of the panelists could describe themselves in 6 words or less. And it could almost be like a personal tagline for you guys have for yourselves. Dana, do you want to start us off?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So confession, I didn't think of my 6 words ahead of time, but I would say badass mentor, rebel, always been a business owner. I know that's more than 6. Sorry.
We'll keep your camera on.
All right. I'll hand it off. Haley.
All right. I think I'm going to go with, I hope people have more fun while getting shit done.
Ooh.
I'll hand it off to Asmara.
Hi everyone, I'm Asmara and I am the chick with the tips, the quips, and the red lipstick. What up everybody? And I'm going to hand it off to Ashita.
Thank you. Hi everyone, Ishita Sethi. I think my tagline is think big to grow big. I'll just leave it at that and hand it off to, who's next?
Parul.
Parul.
Yeah, Parul, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. I'm Parul. I'm a story coach, and my tagline is, why settle when you can sparkle?
Ooh. You guys are mad creative, I tell you what.
I know. Rocking it.
You guys are absolutely phenomenal. So today we're going to tackle the concept of being a woman in a man's world. Thinking about or talking about this idea of misogyny or, women finding their voice and their place in the workplace or even as an entrepreneur, right? So we have a great mix of those who work in corporate America and those who are entrepreneurs, but also those who may have worked in corporate America before becoming entrepreneurs. And so we want to tackle the obstacles we face in both of those arenas. So kicking it off, what do you guys believe was, has been, is the biggest challenge that women face? And add to that, what do you think is the root cause?
I don't mind jumping in here. So for me, I've actually always been in women-dominated industries. I started out in massage therapy and then opened up my own business supply outlet in that industry. So I was always in a female-dominated industry. But I think in general, as entrepreneurs and working with so many women, that there's like this overlying thing of undercharging. And that same piece that, that we talk about in the Lean In book that says, women tend to wait until they can do 120% of the job before they even apply. And I think that really applies in entrepreneurial world. And I see the wage gap just grows year by year because, men are taught to just like, all right, just ask for more, and I see this in the coaching world that I'm in now. Women will start out of the gate and they'll charge like $2,500 for a package. Men will start out same starting package, $8,500 or $10,000. And so there's this big gap. And I think that piece is sets us back, holds us back, because we're afraid to ask for whatever the money is for a variety of reasons. And I know we touched on some of the things in the last great discussion, but that to me is probably my biggest, the biggest thing from the entrepreneur side, because we have control over what we're doing and we can do it to ourselves. So I'll hand it off.
Yeah, I totally echo everything that Dana said. And I got my start in the music industry. So I was working at a recording studio, and that's a incredibly male dominated space. I was on the audio engineering side. And so there's very rarely ever a woman in the room. And the thing that we would face most often is even getting the opportunity to show our skills. Like a lot of the time it was up to the mix engineer or, you know, the artist and who they wanted in the room. And even to get a space in there just for the fact that, oh, maybe you're not as good just because you're a woman, or maybe you don't have enough experience just because you're a woman. That was something that was faced a lot. So even having the opportunity to present a package or some sort of offer for somebody was not always an option even.
And this is something I feel really very strongly about, actually, because I think that especially when it comes to women, because there exists these spaces of like male dominated spaces, if you get a place there, it's like you should be privileged to even be here, right? And then it brings this whole mental script of, okay, well, I don't want to overstep my privilege. Therefore, I'm going to conform to other people's expectations of me and kind of almost pigeonhole myself in that way, whether that comes through the way we charge or the way we interact with people. So I think probably the root cause that comes to mind right away for me is this idea of, so men have always had these like male dominated spaces. So for them, it's about refinement. But for women, because we're coming into it, it's about like traversing into a new space. And that comes with a whole Pandora's box worth of things that you have to then unpack. And I don't think that there are a whole lot of spaces like this where women can actually go through those motions and ask like, where are those limiting beliefs coming from?
I'm just sat here thinking, did my struggle as a woman, as a girl growing up in a man's world start when I started working? And the answer that pops up is no. My struggle to be seen and heard as a girl in a man's world started way back. For as long as I remember, I always had to do more and be more to be seen and heard as a girl. And this is where I want to pause and give you a peek into an insight into the culture that I grew up in, just so that you're able to appreciate where I'm coming from. So obviously, where I grew up in India, we have things like mansplaining. It exists everywhere, I think. We have things like disparity in wages. Yes, we have issues around maternity leave and corporate careers and struggle to be seen in careers. But I would say my struggle began just by virtue of the fact that I was a girl. And that is a reality that remains for so many girls back there. Because the gender disparity, the gender inequality that we are talking about is not just about work and career. It is interwoven into the social and the cultural fabric of the place. So this gender disparity goes as deep as the social fabric, the cultural fabric, the religious fabric, the spiritual fabric. And blimey, the stories are not just about this life that we are living. Those stories of how it serves people to have boys as sons or be sons, and hence men, those stories have been extrapolated to the afterlife as well. What chance is there that people who are, whether it is men or women, who are partaking in these stories would not start buying into them? And I think that's where my struggle started, because when I was little, I just couldn't understand why women would want to be let's say, moms to only boys. I mean, as a 6-year-old or as a 7-year-old, that was one of the biggest questions. Why does a woman not want to have daughters? And I just couldn't understand. And now with the awareness and the wisdom that I have, I'm able to see that everybody is dipping into the same stories. And it's conditioning that has come in from centuries and centuries. And here I'm not bashing any culture. I'm not stereotyping anything, but it's just one of those sad things that has happened to our culture. And the stories have become so deep that it is not just men, but also women who have identified those stories and who are carrying on those stories and passing on those stories generation after generation. So when I look back at the root cause, I think work comes much later. I think those stories start right in the beginning, much earlier in our lifespans. Go on, say something. What do you think?
Well, thank you for sharing that, Carl. That's an interesting perspective. And given that I'm from India, I guess I had a bit of a different background. So I sort of, I can identify to some extent in theory, more so in practicality. But thank you for sharing that. But I guess my biggest struggle as a woman in corporate America, given that I'm a director at Bank of America, I think has sort of been, or initially was, just sort of trying to fit into the boys' club. As an analyst, as a woman, very few women obviously are in the banking and finance industry. I found myself trying to be part of the boys' clan, trying to sort of talk sports with our clients amongst our peers. But eventually, I realized I had to find my own path and figure out my own sort of calling, right? And so my struggle has been to try and connect with clients on things like sports, which obviously doesn't come very easy to me. So I'm working through that bit by bit.
Thanks to each one of you, honestly, and thanks for just sharing these uncomfortable and candid stories with us. And just to kind of back off of what you guys said, that even the share of paid and unpaid domestic work between men and women, it's different. Are women included enough digitally and financially and their political views? So just their standing in every sphere beyond work. And I think you guys really beautifully highlighted the root causes, which is also the universal truth, and how we're almost discounting our own experiences and potential, and just because we do not have those equal opportunities in our ecosystem. So I think to build off of that, we would love to know from each one of you, how has the support system been like? Did you find women's allies at your workplace, and what role did they play?
I was lucky. I had a lot of support growing up. And although I shared with you a certain side of the culture that I grew up in, my parents were very particular that I didn't become a catastrophe to this culture, the social and cultural fabric that we are talking about. So I'm a girl who grew up with every possible opportunity. Yes, there were challenges that came in just by being a girl because of the environment. And there was always struggle for my parents to keep me safe from that point of view. But then I would say my mom was my biggest cheerleader, because she wanted to make sure that that I do not become a casualty at the hands of the patriarchy. So I think that was one of her big objectives in life.
So I was really lucky to have a lot of support too, not until college, because I was very fortunate to go to a liberal arts women college, Barnard, woohoo, for the win. And, having that community of women, but also having that deep connection to an amazing university, so Columbia University, that for me was really empowering, because I got to have the best of both worlds. I got to dabble in, well, more than dabble, it's more like slave away in labs, doing my research and still having these amazing conversations about what being a woman means and how to make that definition, if you will, as inclusive and as truthful as possible. And it was only then that I realized how dysfunctional some of my childhood scripts were. So like, for example, my dad and I, like, I love him, I respect him, but I realized that once I hit puberty and I like developed breasts, it's like he just stopped hugging me. You know, it was like there was no physical contact anymore from that point. And I think from like the age of 11 to when I graduated college, I think on my college graduation day was actually like my first hug in like a decade from my own father, right? And I think that there's a lot of this like institutionalized shame around our gender and our sexuality and what that means. And I didn't realize that until I got to college. And actually my college roommates gave me the talk because my mom had no idea how to ever approach that topic. She was like, nope, you're going to be a virgin until the day you get married, and there's nothing else to discuss there. So it was funny because in freshman year, our like memory album is called Asmara, did we teach you spooning? And it's like that's just how it was, you know. It's like, so it's important to have that tribe where you can have these difficult conversations, but also have a little bit of fun, because there is so much BS out there, and you got to look after yourself and you got to look after your girls.
That's so awesome. I am also really lucky to be able to have parents and aunts and grandmothers and neighbors and mentors and teachers who are all women who I just happen to be surrounded by from a really young age. And they all made me feel really powerful, like I was able to do anything. And they would challenge me too if I saw some other boy doing something and I was like, you know, I want to do that. They're like, then go do it. Why not? There was a lot of women in my life who said, why not? Like, there's no reason why you can't. And that made me feel really good. And it made me understand, like, oh, cool. Like there's really no difference here besides the external difference of me being a woman versus a man. And so I've been very lucky in that sense and have felt that support for a long time.
I would definitely echo that. I mean, I've been very blessed and fortunate to have some very strong women supporters and role models in my life. My parents, my grandparents, my mom's been my biggest cheerleader, continues to be so. And as I sort of grew out of that shell, you know, I found great friends who have sort of been my really strong tribe, as Asmara alluded to. And as I sort of grew up in the corporate world, I started to find mentors, both men and women, who sort of I sought advice from, who helped me sort of take the next step in my career and even in my personal life. And I think you just have to form these relationships and seek these mentors and sponsors, many of which is organic. And it's amazing, like the amount of support people are willing to lend.
I love hearing all these stories that, you know, you women were so supported. That is like, it's beautiful because we hear so many stories of where we weren't. And I'm the odd man out. I was not. So I grew up in a cult, and it was not okay to be a woman. It was not okay to be independent. I'm gonna cry here. So I didn't have support. And it's not really until the last 5 years that I found true support. I went bouncing around from community to community looking for that support. So growing up in a cult, I had a false sense of community. I had people who would be there for me if I needed food, if I needed, you know, a ride to the hospital, but they would not support me being different. They wouldn't support me being independent. And so to me, that's not true support. True support is when you have somebody who will celebrate you as you are, in the full expression, being completely different, challenging the system, challenging the status quo. And of course, I'm on this planet to be a catalyst of change. And sometimes that's uncomfortable for everyone, including me. And I'm grateful now to start finding some strong women who are not triggered as much by me, or at least if they are, they're willing to say, hey, can we talk about this? You know, so it is out there, but I see that there are some wounds that most of us women need to heal in order to support each other as sisters, you know, as a global community, to be able to feel like somebody else can have your back without wondering when they're going to stab you in the back. So it's beautiful, and I'm so excited to hear that there are lots of women who are being supported.
Yeah, thank you
We're
guys.
here to support you now, Dana. Don't worry, we got you, girl.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of this forum and this group, right? In terms of literally, you all met last time a month ago, and here we are, you know, being able to have these deep conversations and being able in a position to support one another without judgment. And, you know, you bring up all a great point in terms of, yes, we can all be our biggest allies, but sometimes we can be our biggest deterrents, right? And the opportunity, and as Dana alluded to, you know, sometimes it's healing those own wounds within ourselves to then be able to project love and support out into the world in order to be able to receive that back from those that we connect with. So thank you all so much for sharing that and your vulnerability. And this is why you guys are absolutely magical and amazing. So, you know, we've had a lot of great discussion in terms of, okay, what is it? What are our biggest challenges? How do we find support? And as we think both in the realm of corporate America and even entrepreneurship, what do you guys see as one of women's biggest strengths that are often underutilized or underrepresented in those spaces that we might be able, as we move forward, to take action, bring to the forefront to show, hey, here's the value we add and here's how we do it?
Yeah, I love this question. To me, I think there's such a gift in our innate desire to create community. And, you know, as women as leaders, I would love to see women step in as their full expression so that they create a more collaborative environment. And it's less about, you know, one person trying to get ahead, but it's like, how do we get the most out of everybody? And I think if corporate world, you know, invited more of that, I think women would step into it a little bit more, and then that would, you know, open the space. But I think we as individual women also need to take responsibility and say, okay, how do I bring a little bit more of that? It's not going to change overnight, whether that's in our, you know, individual businesses as entrepreneurs or in the corporate world, you know, but to not push that aside, that is a gift, just one of the many gifts. And I'll leave the other ones for the other amazing panelists to share.
I would agree with that. And I would just say overall, just the power of emotional quotient, just like the EQ that women can bring to the table, just the power of empathy, the power of being able to listen and relate, not something that I've seen my male counterparts do or display or demonstrate in the corporate world, at least. And I think that's what sets us apart from them as we sort of, you know, try and build these relationships, whether with clients or internally with peers.
I would add.
Please go
Go
ahead,
on.
Carly. No, you first.
Thank you. I would add investing in relationships, and this ties into what Ishita shared about high EQ. But women in general invest a lot of themselves in their relationships, and thereby creating that community that Dana was talking about. And I think it's beautiful. It's more collaborative, and it's not just competitive.
I think one thing I've always appreciated about women, and obviously when you say things like that, you run the risk of generalization. You know, I don't think there's any such thing as like gendered personality traits, if you will. But I think that women tend to be better at seeing the stuff at the periphery. You know, because we've always had to be the people that wear those multiple hats, you know, whereas like society has entrenched men as like primary breadwinners. So it's like, that's what they're worried about. But the roles we've been cast in tend to require more juggling, more of appreciation of how the nuances interact with each other. And I think that's something that can be a superpower, especially in a boardroom, because whereas everyone else is laser focused on something like, say, the bottom line, you have this other voice saying, but what can we add to that? You know, what more value can we bring in? And I think that's where that's where the value comes from.
Yeah, oh my goodness, everything that's been said, like I I would essentially just be repeating everything, but it's so good. And one thing I think that we also do really well as women is the collaborative piece, but finding other people to bring into the room, so to speak, or to bring onto projects where we can see their unique strengths, their unique skills, their unique EQ that they can bring to the table, and will make the whole team stronger or the whole company stronger. And to really bring those collaborative efforts actually together to make something happen is something that I think women excel at exceptionally.
Awesome. I think, as allies, for us to create that space around us and also for us to be those people at our workplaces and in our environment, like you guys said, that who almost bring that human touch in a boardroom and who almost kind of create that collaboration and look at the context and are naturally more inclusive. What do you think in particular, needs to change in order for women to have more equality in the workplace? So even, as entrepreneurs and as people in the corporate world.
I think one thing that we commonly go to is like what needs to change externally. But I think that if we can change internally and just take the step for ourselves, like make a seat at the table instead of asking for one or expecting somebody else to pull up a chair, like bring it yourself, and really engaging into or maybe unlocking like that inner warrior that all women have inside of them to be able to like take what they want and take what they deserve, because it's there, and other people, and men specifically, right, are like taking these things and they don't expect it. They just kind of are like, I'm here, accept me. And so same thing with us. We show up and we're like, hey, accept this. This is what we have to offer. And again, just like make that seat at the table instead of like waiting around or expecting something else to change, really having that change happen internally.
Okay, I just have to ride on that because that is like so good, right up my alley. It really is. Like when we show up to the table with an innate expectation of like, of course you're going to pay me equally. And then we can be like, then it's different how we talk about it. It's like, what do you mean you're not paying everybody equally? Like it becomes a different question as opposed to you're not paying everybody equally, right? Like it's a different, it changes the dynamics. And then what's great is that when you come to the table and you're like, why? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean you're not paying people equally? It puts doubt in the other person's mind and it invites them to step up without making them wrong. And so that shift has to come from within, because first of all, we need to clear, as Haley, I'm sure you're like with me on this. It's like, we've got to deal with our own pieces. What are those things that within us that we say, oh, I can't, I shouldn't, and oh, just be quiet, don't rock the boat, and oh, don't be seen, right? All that stuff. I'm not always neurotic, but I've been neurotic, so I know what this is. It's just drama, But I think if we can, I'm really a big believer with you, Haley. It's like we've got to do the inner work. If we want to show up differently, you got to change the landscape that's inside. And I know I'm like, I can get on a soapbox and go on for hours on this one. Hand it over.
And I think one of the things that's so powerful about tweaking that internal landscape is it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. So you tweak that internal landscape, you bring about different outcomes, and people's expectations change as a result. And that is what we need to do, free ourselves from these shackles of our own expectations or other people's. And I think another big part of it also is to rethink how the family unit as a whole, right? Because up until now, a lot of the narrative has been like, oh yeah, so like women are going to raise the kids, they're going to be the ones doing the school runs, they're going to be doing that. And it's like, well, how about we step back and we assess the family unit as a system and say, okay, well, these are the good things that you're bringing to the table as the mother, and these are the things that you are bringing to the table as the mother, the father, the guardian, whoever, and just be more mindful of the fact that the family unit isn't what it used to be, 50 years ago, and it's time to update those responsibilities and those roles. And I think once we do that, that will be a huge step in the right direction for things like alleviating the gender pay gap or having like functional maternity and paternity leave policies. So yeah, it's a big job, but someone's got to start it. And we all get the chance to start it within ourselves.
I think I would just echo everything that you guys have said and just say, challenge the status quo, because the status quo today is not what it should be. I think to your point, Asma, it's about, equality, right? Whether it's in the corporate world or whether it's about being an entrepreneur instead of fighting for equal pay, or whether it's, a father and a mother doing equal sort of chores. It's all about challenging the status quo, and it starts with yourself.
Absolutely. I would add one more thing, and that is letting other people help us. I'm sure there are lots of men who want to support women. I'm one of those women who have had enormous support from all the men in my life, be it my dad, be it my brothers, be it my husband. I am blessed. And my mom has always been my biggest cheerleader. But I let these people help me, because if I don't want to be helped, there's nothing these guys can do for me. And I think we as women need to understand that it is okay to ask for that help. It is okay to let people support us. And it's okay to shine with their help, because we don't have to do this alone. We don't need to do this alone. We don't need to make it harder than it needs to be.
You guys you bring up so many good points, right? In terms of how to create change, it's starting with us. So, and we all know that, and all of us who on this call have gone through a lot of inner work, and we've done a lot of inner work. From your vantage point of your experience, what do you think prevents women from taking that first step to initiate the inner work and starting with themselves and having the courage and the voice to say, this is who I am, or this is who I want to be, and I'm taking steps to make myself become that? What stops us from doing that?
I don't think anything stops women from doing that. I think women naturally, what I've seen, whether you are doing it formally with, coaching or therapy or, reading books, but I think women are naturally drawn to be looking. Unfortunately, sometimes that translates into self-criticism, as this is what I'm doing wrong. And that's a piece that needs to change. But I think more the question is like, how do we bridge from just introspection that is berating to introspection that moves us forward in the direction that we're going. And I think a lot of that is stereotypes, what's socially acceptable. And then the other big factor for me is that women are terrible as a general rule, not every woman, but women are generally terrible, especially if you have kids, taking any time for yourself. You come last. Right? That's the thing. I'm not a mother, but I've seen all of my clients who are mothers and my friends who are mothers. And it's like every single time they get like the last 5 minutes of the day. And that's usually when they're just before they go, out for the night. So I think it's setting up that dynamic where you are equal priority in your family, not a lesser priority.
So this is a question that I absolutely adore. And Dana, I'm with you there 100%, bridging that gap from negative to positive introspection. And this is something that I delve into a lot through the mindset program I've developed in Liven, because the premise of that is anything that you have ever wanted to do in your life and you have held yourself back in some way, there's only 5 things that have ever held you back. And I can guarantee you will not find anything beyond these 5 things. So one is the material self. So either something in your body, your finances, your home, something you own that you feel is insufficient to tackle it. Aversion, you just have that visceral reaction to something, whether that's to vulnerability, whether that's to not being enough, or however that manifests. Then there is restlessness. So just this lack of focus, basically, because you're dwindling down your energy and you're only giving yourself those last 5 minutes of the day. And then there's heaviness, which is that weighed down kind of like inertia feeling where you're just like, oh, you know, like, I know this is something I need to change, but I can't be bothered because I instead need to work on XYZ. And then the last one, which I think is the most difficult, is cognitive dissonance. So you are simultaneously holding two contradictory beliefs. And I think that's the one that women especially have trouble untangling, because society gives us a lot of our beliefs without us even realizing it. And then we start saying these scripts back to ourselves and we don't even know where they came from until we stop to go like, oh, wait, that doesn't sound like me. Who is that? So that's kind of the long answer to what holds us back.
I think that's so beautifully put. I would just say fear of challenging the status quo and sort of, you know, thinking, is this even right? Can I even do this? Should I even be doing this? I mean, in my own journey, you know, when I've encountered those questions on multiple occasions, and it's been frightening. Like, should I be challenging this? Should I sort of be raising my hand even though I'm not totally qualified? And it's just been fear. But I think over time, you just have to sort of, you know, get used to it, deal with it, and move on. Because if you don't do that, you aren't paving the path forward.
Yeah, like Dana said, that women are more inclined, they are inclined to work on themselves. I would say a lot of times when we overdo our strengths, they can become our weaknesses. So as women, we are inclined to work on ourselves. And the way it gets in our way is we are so dedicated to working on ourselves that we let ourselves fall into that rabbit hole, because we want to be more than we are, we want to do more than we are doing. And that's the reason where all those horrible patterns come up. If we can just pause and change those scripts, and I don't have the answers. I don't know whether it's a parent's job, whether it is our job, but somewhere, and or maybe this is something we need to do together for ourselves as individuals and for our kids, that we have to give the messaging that you're fine as you are. You don't need to be more. You don't need to do more to be worthy or to fit in, because there is a lot of value in getting that external feedback. But if we are too inclined to get that external feedback, it is going to come and bite us in our bum.
Oh my goodness, there's so many good things that have been said, and I echo really everything. And the thing that stands out most to me and has been difficult in facing my own internal whatever biases, demons, whatever you want to call them, has really been mainly that fear and the pain of going back to those past experiences, of really understanding where they all came from. And in order to understand where they all came from, you got to sort of sit with yourself for a while, take that time, which again, as Dana said, we don't really want to do or don't feel like we have time to do, and dig in and relive internally some of those experiences to then come out and say, oh, I see why I think this way now. And now I have a different perspective of my, so to speak, past self, and from that experience and who I am now. Like, I'm not this person that I was 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago. And I can rework my experiences and my thoughts to benefit me now for that.
Those were some great insights, you know, how you guys highlighted all the aspects of inertia we have towards inner transformation. I think I also saw Chibet join in. Hi, Chibet, can you hear us?
Hey.
Hey, awesome. So we were actually answering the question of how women can take that first step towards their inner transformation.
I think, hi everyone, nice to see you. I'm trying to figure out the light because I'm in the house and I have not had a call in the night before. Is it bright enough?
You're always shining.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys are all like looking like the sun and bright, and
if you stay leaned back, you've got more light on your face. Yeah.
You should see how it looks so bright. Okay, I'll figure it out before the call starts. I think the first step for me is to acknowledge where I am, just situate myself, and then start a process of what do I need to do to get to point B. And that involves finding mentors, finding coaches, finding peer groups, finding people you can aspire to, that you can borrow off from, tap into. And it comes down, I think, to a peer group that is progressive towards that outcome that you want to achieve.
Awesome. And thanks to our great audience, we have a few questions trickling in. So I think we have one from Laura. She says that looking back, what would any of you do differently, if at all?
I would spend 0 time, 0 seconds giving a shit about other people's expectations. Literally, it was such a waste of time and energy. And I just felt self-conscious all the time because I was holding myself to these standards that frankly, I didn't even care about, right? So really putting those beliefs under a microscope and being like, does this serve me? And if it doesn't serve you, get rid of it. You know, you don't need that in your life. So that is the #1 thing I would have done differently.
Yeah, this is always a double-edged sword question because there's the, what would you do differently? Well, there's a million different things because hindsight, we have way more experience and we can look back and we say, oh, I wish I had done that. But the reality is that, that we are who we are because of our collective experiences, because of all of the years. My last 50 years has made me who I am today. So if I did something different, then I wouldn't be who I am today. That being said, there's that one side of it. The other side, knowing what I know now, I would start selling psychedelics way earlier. It's been phenomenal for my healing journey, like getting my head right out of my ass. So that would be my thing.
Looking back, I would spend less time second guessing myself. I think I've done that on multiple occasions. I still do it, but I have to actively try and not do it.
I would say that asking for help sooner and bringing more people into my inner circle who feel more aligned, and understanding what aligned for me actually means, and sort of ignoring all of the other noise, whether it's things, people, projects, tasks, and really focusing on the people who can actually help me get to where I want to go, and then asking those people for help.
I think for me, it would be like what most of you have said. And the biggest one is asking for help sooner. Yeah.
One thing I would do differently is not have the belief that I need to be more masculine, have that energy, behave like men, think like them, to be successful and to be happy. Because that was probably the worst decision of my life. It felt like a good idea when I made that decision and put on that energy because of the wisdom I had as a 10-year-old, but it was one of the most horrible things that I did to myself. And only when I unlearned all that nonsense and started accepting me for who I am, it is then that I truly, truly sparkled.
Thank you guys so much for sharing all of that. We have another question that came in. So knowing that the theme is lift each other as we climb, what's one way that as you guys grow in your careers or in your businesses, what's one way that you lift other women as you climb?
My favorite thing to do is just like, words of encouragement may not be the best phrase for it, but an immense amount of showing people just how badass and magical they are without doing anything. It's not the things that they have, it's the person that they are that is the most powerful thing, and really shedding light on that in whatever way possible, whether it's through words, whether it's through like conversation, or whether it's like taking them somewhere or doing something with them, like an activity with them, to be like, look at what you're capable of, look at how strong and powerful you actually are, and use that. Know that you have that internal strength within you already, but that I see it as well. And if I can see it, it means that so many other people can see it too.
I think that's so beautiful. I would just add the power of giving back. Like if you climb, take other women with you, whether it's mentoring them, sponsoring them, guiding them, or just having a chat with someone, just asking them how they are, you know, help them along the way, because you were given a lot of help if you sort of climbed on.
Yeah, I would totally piggyback on that I'm really big on, if I'm having even networking calls and it's a fellow woman, I tend to just, if there's something that shows up that I can, you know, share an insight, mentorship, even some free coaching, I will give very freely to those women. And I'd, you know, maybe, I don't know whether it's cultural or I just feel that men have a lot of resources, so I don't feel the need to do that. But with women, I really like to just give them that extra boost of support. Like as Haley says, you know, it's, if we can show other women that they really are brilliant, that if they could just believe in themselves, that there's so much more possible. And I think we need to hear it a number of times so that we can believe it.
One of the things I do is that I'm a big cheerleader to my fellow women, and I am able to make them feel safe when it comes to stepping up and owning their magic. That's how I would like to put it. So, because when people don't say, they're just not going to show up, and I'm able to do that for them, and I'm able to cheerlead for them, and I think it's beautiful.
So I definitely echo what everyone has said about, you know, supporting your fellow woman in any way you can. But I find that the most important thing I've ever done is be transparent and liberal with constructive feedback. Because the thing is, many people do not know how to give feedback, okay? They try it and they just completely muck it up. They destroy your sense of self-worth and think they're helping you, right? But they're not. Or they are actually trying to actively undermine you, which is a whole other like can of worms anyway. So I think that in addition to that whole like support aspect and the mentoring and the coaching and the rest of it, I think the power comes from being able to help women realize what they can be, right? So not just celebrating what they are or their journey, but helping them really make that future self more concrete, so then they can rise above petty things like, you know, office gender politics or whatever, and just get shit done.
Well, on top of everything that everyone has said, I think one thing that I wish I learned earlier is to operate from my feminine energy side. And I love what Parul said. I don't need to be like a man at all. I can't be like a man. And I think we grew up being conditioned that you need to be strong like the boys. I don't even know who started saying this nonsense, because I don't need to be like a man, because I'm not a man. So I find that I am, in fact, happiest when I operate in my being energy, which is just being feminine and just trying to associate even more with women. Of course, at work, you need to show up in your masculine, but at what point then do you get into the awareness that, okay, I'm no longer fighting for my life. I'm no longer at work. Switch this off, leave it, pack it, and just be in my being. I am trying to teach that to my daughters, and anyone I meet, I try and tell them, look up feminine energy and try and tap that and bring it to work. That's something I want to actively like pass on.
Wow, that was super powerful about how we should own our feminine energy. We have another question from the audience. It says that if you were a man, how different do you feel your journey would be if you did the same kind of work?
So I'll jump in here. I actually it would have been harder for me. The massage therapy industry, women are the preferred provider of services. But at the same time, I think it would have been easier to, like, once you do build up a business, the men tended to make more money than the women even in there. Like, they had a harder start. So comparatively, I built up to a wait list in 6 months. And some of my colleagues in the same graduating class took 3 years to get to that same point. So it was harder, but in the long run, they made more money. So in a lot of ways, the work that I do, with the deep sexual trauma healing and getting people to really look at the core pieces, I'm not sure it would be any easier being a man. It would actually have some challenges, because definitely in working with women, that there's a space that can't open up. So for me personally, I think that it would have been harder.
For me, I think coming from originally the music industry and then going into the consulting and coaching space for creativity, it definitely had its advantages being a woman, but in strictly business, getting connections and deals and people offering more opportunities to me, I probably would have been I would have moved at a faster pace, essentially, and wouldn't have been so afraid to say, hey, this is my investment cost, and leave it at that. And people probably would have been quicker to say, okay, cool, instead of second guessing and all of that jazz. So I think it would have been a faster pace of growth and more other people having more confidence in me, strictly because if I were a man, coming in with the knowledge, the same amount of knowledge, just because of my gender or sex.
Well, I'm completely speculating now because I'm not a man. So I can only guess what it might be like. But my guess is I may not, but I might have taken less time to reach those goals in terms of career or finances. But I think it would have been not as amazing journey as it has been now, because gosh, men don't ask for help. They don't have these close friendships. They don't have these deep conversations. And that would just suck my soul dry. I wouldn't want to be that person. So I'm very happy being where I am.
I would definitely echo and agree with everything that you've said, Farrell. I just don't know what it would be like a man. And if being a man would mean I would have to give up my feminine side, well, then I definitely don't want to be anything different than a woman. But also, I just don't know what lies on the other side of the road, or the pond.
I think I would have been a lot less effective in life as a man, because I have this sneaky feeling that as a man, I would have been like Casanova reborn, because a lot of my upbringing was about like, oh, you have to be like this chaste, perfect little girl and like don't talk to boys and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like if I was a man, I would just go too far in the other direction, just channeling that big dick energy, and just be like, yeah, that's fine. I have a whole roster of girls that I can just waste my time on. And yeah, that wouldn't have been very effective. I wouldn't have a healthy appreciation of women's place in the world and their experiences. And I think that appreciation informs so much of who I am and the work I do. So the short answer is, if I was a man, there would be no overlap with my current feminine self. It would just be like off somewhere as a bartender and just like, just that's how it's been my life.
That's funny. for me, I think based on like what we already know, that men are more likely to apply for jobs they don't qualify for. They're more likely to ask for a loan when they know they have bad credit. Like they don't care. So I think if I was a man, which I don't want to ever be, but if I was, I think I would have made more progress just because of a mindset that would have let me believe in myself. Like I would just be like, oh, I'm so awesome. I can make this happen. And maybe that's the only thing right now I'm trying to borrow from a man's mind, is that self-belief that is to a point of ridiculousness, that I'm so good.
Oh my God, I don't even know where to start. First of all, I just want to thank Esmara for owning her speculative BDE. Had she been anything other than the beautiful woman that she is. You guys, this has been a wonderful conversation, per usual. You guys are absolutely, truly magical. And the energy that you guys bring as a collective unit is, I can't even put words to it. So thank you, as always, for being exactly who you all are and coming as exactly you were made to be, which is a perfect reflection of what this conversation is all about. Palak, anything from your end?
Thanks so much. You summed it up really well. And yeah, I think we had we had an amazing discussion. And I think we, like Haley said, we do not just deserve the seat at the table, we're entitled to it. And I think we're really kind of taking that thought back home. So thanks each one of you for, just putting yourselves out there and sharing your difficult stories in such empowering words. And I think we're really on to humanizing this movement. Thanks so much. And I think our partner in crime, Matt, will put all our contact details in the chat. And yeah, also a little shout out to Matt, who's our
yeah, of a man who supports women from behind the scenes, definitely. He is the example of that. And in front of the scenes too, not just behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think it'll be great to see everybody in our May edition. And yeah, we continue to lift each other up as we can.
Yeah, second Thursday of every month. This is where everyone should be. Thank you guys so much. We love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.